This class is also going to be introduction to MATLAB. Last class I talked about how to use MATLAB as a calculator, where we did general computations, and I showed you how to do plot. Now that plot function which I wrote down and that code which I wrote down, I need to retype all that code all over again if I wanted to do that again. So instead, if you could save that somewhere in MATLAB, then you can actually run that anytime you want. So the focus of this part today is on writing scripts. So scripts are basically code which you write down and you save on your computer so that you can open it up and run it anytime you want. So again, when you open MATLAB, this is what you see. And normally you have the command window, which is right here. If you want to write a script, then you click on this icon called script on the top left corner. And then you can see that the command window actually broke down into two parts. One is the editor, where I'll write the script. And then there's the command window, which will display the output of the script. Okay, so my first goal for today is to write the same code which generated the plot over here. So let's get started. So first thing I like to do is always like to clear the screen, and CLC helps you to do that. So clear the screen. Anything you write after the percentage sign is called a comment. It will not be read by MATLAB. It's only to document the code. Okay. I also like to put clear all, and this is just something which is used to clear the memory. So if you want to test any code any point of time, you can use the command window. So for example, if error equals 1, and you can see that it appears in the workspace on the right, where my pointer leads. If you want to clear that, you say clear all, and then it just disappears. That's to clear everything in the workspace. So clear all variables. Okay, now let's start typing down things we wrote last time. So t equals linspace 0 to 2 times pi. I want 100 points. And then y equals sine of t. And then plot t comma y. Okay. Plot. So run this. Okay, so I've prompted to save this. Now, what I recommend is when you install MATLAB, it will actually create it will create a folder called MATLAB in documents. You can just make a folder called, I call it MATLAB ME410. So all my code, which is related to this course, will be saved here. And so this MATLAB ME410, which you see is residing in my documents folder. So documents MATLAB ME410. So let me call this, say, test 1. Okay, it looks like you don't see the plot. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I figured out that you don't see the plot because I'm sharing the MATLAB window. Let me share my desktop instead, and then you see the plot. Stop sharing. Okay, now I'm sharing the desktop. Okay, so let me run this again. Okay, now you see nothing. And that's because what happens is when I ran this command, it produced the figure. And when I reran this command, it updated the figure, but the figure doesn't pop up because it was generated and written to that file, that window, which was invisible. So what I do is normally I use these 3 commands all the time in all the code. Close all figures. So this command, close all, which you see written, actually close all figures so that they will reappear when I run the code. So now let me run this, and you see that's the sine function. Okay, so that was easy. You could, as I said, you could modify this if you wanted. Instead of just the blue line, if you want to show, let's say, the plus sign to plot, then I would just change this to x plus. Okay, let's see what happens. And so you have the plus sign showing up. If you wanted to make this red, then the command is actually R plus. So you see it's red now. Okay, and so you can play with this. If you want to know more about plot, as I told you in the last class, you just say help plot. And that actually tells you a lot about the function. This is how I used it earlier, x comma y, and then I got a little bit more fancy by including the third argument s, which can be colors, it can be points, circles, so on, symbols, it could also be lines. So I already put two things here, r and plus. But if I also want to draw a line which connects the pluses, then I should just put dash. Now if I run this, it actually connects the pluses with the line. So the way I would say you want to learn MATLAB is just by playing with it. Okay, so that's the first example. Let's do something different now. Let's talk about how do you sum, say, elements of an array. Okay, so again, what I'll do is I'll do CLC. I'll do clear all. In this example, I'm not going to plot anything, so I'm not going to put close all. Okay, so let's say, for example, if I want to write, if I have this particular array, okay, 1 1 3 4, which is a 1 row 4 column array. The sum of the elements of the array are, well, it's 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 4, that's 2 plus 5 plus 4 9, so the answer should be 9. Okay, I'm going to write a function which basically sums the elements of this array. Okay, so what I'll do is uh, I'll create a variable called total sum, which keeps track of the sum. I'll initialize that to 0. Okay. Now I need to do 1 plus 1. So what I'll do is I will write a for loop which loops through all the elements of A. So in this case, it'll be for I is my sort of dummy variable, which is going to keep track of the indices. So A1, A2 corresponding to the elements of A. So 1, 2. So I need to go all the way to the end of A, which is of length 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. And the command which helps you to find the length of A is called length. Okay, so then I write total sum equals total sum plus AI. Okay, what this function is doing is it's taking the first element, so I equals 1, and it's adding to the total sum. So it'll be 0 plus the first element, which is 0 plus 1 is 1. The next time it goes to 2 when you have the original sum, which is 1 plus the second element, so 1 plus 1 will be 2. And then 2 plus 3, 5, and 5 plus 4, 9. So then if you want to display this, you just type total sum. And so it asks me to save this. So I'm going to call it test2.m. And then when you run this, you see 9 printed in the command window. Okay, so that's nice. You got 9, but what if you wanted to find sum of, let's say, multiple arrays? So if I had A, then if I had B, make up something, 6, 5, 7, C, 10, 1, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so if I have multiple such arrays, and if I want to do sum the elements, now what I need to do is I need to create 3 such total variables and then run this loop 3 times for different lengths to get the sum. And that's just wasteful. I don't want to do that, because it's going to make me write this code to find the sum again and again. So in this case, if you think there's a need to automate things, then you write what is known as a function. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to write a function next. So function is basically a building block. It's sort of like a unit which does some computations for you, and then you can call that function anytime you want to do lots of computations. So let me remove this and open a new file. So plus and copy this one too, because I also want to find the sum of A. And then I'll copy this. So I typically like to use the shortcuts. It's for Mac, it's Command C. For Windows, it will be Control C. But you could also highlight this, right click and say copy and then paste. Okay, so I just save this for a second. I'm going to write a function first and then complete this particular file which I started. So I'm going to create a new function. Okay, so let me save this. I think delete the files, test3.m. Okay, I'm not running this. I'm just saving. I'll open it later. It's actually on the left side. If I wanted, I can double click it here and it opens up on the editor. So you can try it. There it opens. Okay, so I'm going to write a function now, and I'll call that function mySum. And its input is going to be any matrix. So let's call that matrix. Okay, you can call it any name you want. This is actually a dummy variable. It doesn't matter what you call it. And then I want to output the total sum for this. So what I'll do is I'll copy this code. I don't want to rewrite it. So right click, copy. Okay, and paste. Okay, now here what I did was I modified my array from A to M. So I'm going to replace this with M, and I also need to replace this M. So what this function does is it basically takes an input, an array M. It uses the same dummy variable total sum, and it sums over each element, and then the total sum, which is going to keep track of the running sum of the elements, is returned back. So here, total sum is the output, and M is the input. And this is the syntax of writing a function in MATLAB. You always write input on the right side and the output on the left side. Again, this is probably the syntax for most functions in most programming languages. They pretty much follow the same syntax. Might be slightly different in C, but more or less, the right-hand side is the input, left-hand side is the argument. So let's save this. So file, save, and you see that it actually tells me to. So when I save the other one, it called it untitled, but this one, when I try to save it, it called it mySum, and that's because it actually identifies all the functions with the name of the function. So I saved it as mySum. And now I'm all set to call this. So sum of A is total sum A. Sorry, my bad. I need to call my function. So my sum, sum B equals my sum B, and sum C equals my sum. Okay, so we can run this, but then it won't really print the output because I suppressed the output using the semicolon. So I'm just going to remove the semicolon so that doesn't suppress the output. And I'll run this, and then it see that it prints sum of A, which we've already seen, it's 9. Sum of B, which is 6 plus 5 plus 7, that's 18, that's right. And then the final one is 10 plus 1, 11 plus 5 is 16. 20 to 29. So it printed the output correctly. So this is how I got the sum for different arrays without actually rewriting the code again. Okay, so this is a way in which you can automate the code. Now, having written the code to find the sum, it turns out that you don't really need to do this because MATLAB has actually written down functions, created functions for you. So actually, there is a function called sum, which does exactly what I did, and you probably don't need to write this. So even though I showed you how to write my sum, if I was to write this by myself for a different project, I would not really write my sum. I'll actually search for MATLAB to see if there was any function called sum. So if I write help sum, then you can see it says the sum helps sum of elements. S equals sum of X is the sum of elements of the vector X. Okay, so now actually we can check if our output makes sense. So sum A, sum B, sum C. Okay, this because this is how the output's run. Okay, so let me just put this after this, my sum, so I can compare. It's much easier to compare. Okay, and then run this. And so you see 9 is what is produced by my sum, which I wrote. And then the answer, which was created by sum A, which is inbuilt function in MATLAB, is also 9. Same for B and same for C. So this is just, I used the inbuilt function to check my function, but as I said earlier, you don't really need to write a function if it's already available in MATLAB. You should just reuse code. In fact, a big part of making yourself more efficient is not to write new code. Your goal is to sort of copy code from others. When projects become big and big, you really want to use well-tested functions to build your code. So it's more about how to package your code from using functions that others have written. And one of the resources where you can find code is called MATLAB Central. Okay, let's go to MATLAB Central. And then if you will click File Exchange, this is actually a place where MATLAB, well, people post MATLAB code they've written for their projects, and it's most of this code is freely available for you to download. You don't have to. Most of this is Creative Commons license, so you don't really have to pay anybody, or you can reuse them in your project. I believe there is some language which prevents people from using it for commercial reasons, but otherwise it's pretty much open for you to use. So if you want to search for something, you just type it and then you see if people have done this. So clearly, my sum is just nobody writes my sum because it's already there in MATLAB. But if ever you wanted to write a code, first thing you would do is first you check in in here. So help sum, and you got the MATLAB function. If it's not there, then you want to maybe go to the internet. MATLAB Central is one place where you could search for the function, or you could just do a search on Google to figure out if there is a function which people have written. So this is what I advocate, which is don't try to reinvent the wheel. Try to use others' code. And sometimes, and this happens a lot, is these codes, these things submitted by other people are incomplete, or they would submit a file, but they wouldn't submit another accessory file which is needed to run that, and the code will not run. So be prepared for that caveat. Also be prepared for the fact that some of this code which you get on MATLAB Central may not be giving the correct output, because it's a person who did this work and posted it, was not tested. However, most of the time, if you have code from MATLAB that is probably well documented, well commented, well written and tested so many times, because there are people who are paid to develop and maintain MATLAB. So I would always trust things coming from MATLAB and be less optimistic about things which I found on the internet. But it's your job to check them out before you use them. Okay, so this is basically the part on writing scripts. I will have some homework problems where I probably have only one homework problem where you'll write a script and a function and you'll get a taste of writing this. Okay, are there any questions